Hey everybody, welcome to the Based podcast. We've got a special guest with us by the name of Seye Adelekan. You may know him from the Gorillaz touring band for the last, I don't know, almost 10 years? Or
Well, I've been playing with Damon for it'll be 10 years, yeah.
Nice. Also just did a tour with Hikaru Utada, Yannis The Yaw. He's a member of Youth of the Apocalypse. They have a really good song to check out with MF Doom. So much. That's just like the top that I of Google, but there is a endless amount of cool stuff you're doing. So, how's it going?
I'm very well. Yeah, London is getting darker, but it's all right though. I'm all right with the end of the year getting a bit dark. We need light and we need shade. That's what I think.
Amen. Have you is your year kind of winding down? Are you home for the rest of the year or what?
Pretty much actually. I'm actually going to be going to the States soon, but that's for like my girlfriend's brother's wedding. So
Fun.
not working.
Yeah.
I've got a music video shoot tomorrow for my next single, which should be dropping relatively soon as well. I haven't set the date just yet. That's exciting. I've got new music of my own coming out, which has been a little minute.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm pretty done. No more big shows. I think maybe one small acoustic thing. But it's typical. It's like, and my January is kind of free, but it's soon probably not going to be.
Right
on. Yeah, it's kind of funny. I'm in the country touring world, and people always just say in town, Nashville just quits. Like you come to December, and then everybody just leaves and goes home because nobody's like really from Nashville,
right?
So everybody like goes wherever they're from, and they don't like nobody plays shows until like March. It just like 4 months of just dark for us.
Wow,
so
even January and February are
pretty much. Well. So we'll get like little private shows and stuff, but I mean for the most part, I mean it really dries up because especially country being like something about country and people want to hear it in fields in the middle of the summer. So
boots
yeah, I
on
suppose,
and jeans.
Yeah, it's not winter music.
I know.
Which is funny, but that's why I'm always jealous of my buddies on like indie tours that are just slammed in January, February. I'm like, man, what's that like working then?
Yeah, or like my friends in metal bands, it's like pure winter, like Scandinavian metal. It's like that's January music.
Yeah, you're totally right. That's funny.
Yeah.
So you have a signature Eastwood bass that sort of just came out. Maybe it's been out for like a year-ish.
I'd say probably less than that. I think it might have been April or something like that.
Yeah, tell me about it. It is aesthetically super freaking cool. It's right up my alley.
I think I've actually got one here. 1 second.
Oh yeah, here we go.
Yeah, I do actually.
For the audio people listening, it is like a matte black on gold brass, and then everyone who knows me immediately is like, "Oh yeah, that's everything you own." Is brass and black. Oh man,
thing is sweet.
Yeah, I call it the stealth like blackout.
Do
you have flats on that?
Yeah.
Does it come with flats?
No, it comes with rounds, but I've got one. I've got two, so I got one with rounds and one with flats on.
Very nice.
And actually, they made 25, and all have gone, which is pretty great. So you can't, unfortunately, you can't get one now.
I didn't know they were that limited.
Yeah, they were quite limited. It was just an experiment because, like I play with Gorillaz, and actually with Gorillaz and anything Damon Albarn's done, and kind of anything I do, I've played their 4-string version of this, the classic 4, which I love, and I put flats on that, and it's a great and really quite affordable instrument. And then when it came to this summer, I needed a 5-string for this Japanese tour with Hikaru Utada. But I don't really play 5-string. I never really have until I sort of got this one. And I was actually going to try and convert one of their 4-strings into a 5-string. And I messaged them saying, "Can you just send me like a spare in the back of the factory that's like might be a bit battered to try this idea?" And they're like, "Well, why don't we actually just do you one?" So like,
that's sick.
I think it works, and it's really, really fun. It's really light. It's passive. It's kind of like two kind of P90 style pickups on it, 3-way switch, volume, tone, simple.
That's all you need.
And just I'm a simple player. I tend to like it's just all up to 10, on whatever it is, and like Yeah, pickup selector I use, but I use I get the tone out my fingers. I'll get the tone out if I use a pick. Otherwise it's more like my favorite guitars. I do really want. Is it I think Joe Dart's one, which is just one. That's literally just one knob, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like one or two, but I think it's one. Yeah.
Well, but then they made another one that's got nothing, no knobs.
And
awesome.
Their thing is hilarious too, because they're like, we knew that one knob was too complicated, so we fixed it.
That's great.
It's pretty funny.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. It's almost like you're gonna get one where it's just like one string.
Yeah.
No knobs,
Right,
one
exactly.
string.
Yeah,
Exactly.
no jack.
No jack.
Did the affordability thing? Was that something you thought about when making a signature instrument, or did it just happen to already be affordable and you like it? So you're like, this is great.
It was serendipitous, I guess. It's just the thing that I liked. The Classic 4, which I also play, that is also like trying to think it's like $800 or something.
Right.
So it's like it's like 680 quid, pounds, so it's, in the grand scheme of instruments, that is pretty affordable. Like, so they're sort of around the $700, $800 poundish euros mark. That's just what I kind of tended to gravitate towards. I do have some like this guitar here, this white one here is a Baum guitar, and they're a Danish company who made me a custom guitar for Gorillaz. Actually, it was called the Pink Thunder. So it's pink with a lightning bolt scratch plate. It's hella master built. It's like it's insanely high quality. And this is also insanely high quality, but it's more of a standard kind of model. Hopefully, we're going to work on something maybe a bit more like a line, at some point soon. But I tend to lean towards simpler instruments. Like when I started playing guitar, I think all my instruments were pretty low budget, and kind of are still to this day. I mean, except for some of the ones that nice people make for me or send me. But because I think in general, you don't need to be spending thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to get at least a decent instrument to start you off. I definitely say to beginners, like, you have no business spending over $500 on your first instrument.
For sure.
Absolutely no need.
Yeah.
It seems a bit ridiculous. And I mean, I knew kids growing up who had they went straight for starting off playing guitar. I had like a basic Ibanez SA 160 BK, which is like a really kind of budget standard model. But my mate was coming in with like a JEM, like a Steve Vai model. And it's just like, you've got a Ferrari, but you kind of don't know how to drive yet. So it's like, it's kind of weird.
What's
it's
the
like,
point?
What's the point? And I was I was in a cooler band, writing better tunes, but with a quarter of the budget. Because ultimately, talent and hard work and your ideas and your perspective is what makes the instrument what it is. Like, I'm certain if I gave, Carson, if I gave you my 5, it would sound nothing like how I play, or Nick.
Absolutely.
It would sound nothing. But that's the beauty of it,
100%.
And in the same breath, like, I recently played a £25,000 SG,
Okay.
and it was so base. It was like there was absolutely nothing to it. I can't even remember why it cost that much. It wasn't like Angus Young's, first guitar. I was like, why is this 25 racks? It's crazy. But it's just a bit of wood and things. At the end of the day, it's like the person who actually makes it something.
Right. And I think also in the modern age of I feel like budget things are way better. I remember when I got like a Squire when I was a kid. Those frets were so high they would cut your hand.
Yeah.
But now, dude, I feel like in the world of those Marcus Miller Sires, if I was starting off, I would pay $400 and get a used one of those and be basically in the. I mean, there are people all over the touring world and Broadway with Sires as at least the backup, but sometimes they're main. Yeah. And I'm like, dude, I just feel like budget stuff is in a really good position. And with so many Mexican and Japanese Fenders floating around, you can always find something in the in the secondhand market for $500 or less. There's just, I feel like such a good climate for budget instruments these days. I don't know.
Yeah. Even in Europe, there's Toman.de, which is a very, very famous instrument purveyor. I think their in-house brand called Harley Benton do really cheap, and I actually don't know how they make them so good. I'm sure there's something kind of wildly unethical happening at some point. But it's they're for £150. They have a J style bass that is is on records. Do you know what I mean? Which is what I would recommend kids starting to. But it makes sense because back when these guitars were created, a lot of the ideas were new. A lot of the technology was top. You needed factories or somebody with so much expertise to make them. But obviously, these have been part of pop culture and have permeated culture for 100 years in terms of electric instruments. So it makes sense that knowledge isn't it's not gatekept anymore. It's not a secret anymore. So it makes sense that, especially with this advances in technology and machining and factories and pipelines and stuff, you can get higher quality stuff lower down the line. Which I think it's democratized music a lot more, I think.
Right, and I also think what's interesting is that now I've got a lot of buddies that pride themselves in finding that Amazon knockoff drive pedal or the Etsy. Jimbo loved that Etsy. It was like a clone. Or people are almost priding themselves in finding the cheap. Oh, dude, this thing is $40. My buddy put me on the
Behringer.
The Behringer little.
Buzz?
No, it was a trem pedal that they make, and it's $40, and it's got everything you want.
Their fuzz, I cannot believe it. I heard it a few weeks ago. This fuzz that's this big, it's this big.
Yeah,
bro, it sounds crazy good. And it was $40. It's £20. I'm I don't know what juju's happening here, but I like it. But also, I think the effect that fuzzes actually give you, they kind of should be trashy. So it's almost a bit if you have a fuzz that's $400 dollars or something like that, it's almost the wiring will be too good. It needs to be it needs to be a bit gnarly and a bit battered. I'd rather have if I'm going to have a cheap pedal, a cheap fuzz actually to me makes sense, unless it's a vintage, fuzz face or something like that.
Right.
And I mean, I'm almost just also a bit why would you tour that? Why would you take that on the road? It's get something a bit less temperamental and a bit more just roadworthy that you can batter around.
Right. We talk about that a lot. Also, you should probably send us that link before it comes out. So me and Carson can snag one.
Just start getting a stockpile. And
all
the values go up, and it's the guitar industry is very funny in that way. Yeah, capitalizing on modern efficiency is ultimately good for a player starting out, a player who's a professional, a player who doesn't have a bunch of stuff that just sits on the shelf. And just there are legacy brands that just come out with similar things every year, but the prices go way, way up, and it's not really in their interest to make it more obtainable and better at a lower volume. So you get these Sires and probably Eastwood to a certain degree, or Harley Benton, and all these market disruptors that are actually making good stuff that you can afford. And then the big guys have to be okay, well, I'll make something a little better and take a little bit less margin,
And also you can do weirder stuff.
Totally.
Eastwood in particular, they find old schematics from or shapes from the 50s and 60s and stuff that were discontinued and turn them into fun things now that you can actually play, a guitar with one mandolin neck and then one tenor guitar neck or something like that. They do mad stuff like that.
That's also perfect for the touring guy that maybe he's having to play or okay, I'll say the Gorillaz. That is a significant catalog of music. So you might need one weird instrument for one song for one part of the show on one tour, and it's where else are you going to get the mandolin neck whatever?
Yeah, true. I mean, in my rack I think I have it's actually not crazy, but 6 guitars or something like that.
Sweet.
So it's Flying V with a hip shot,
I saw that
Um,
picture.
Sick.
yeah, the V,
So
that's
sick.
it's a big moment on my two on my SVT rig.
So sick.
It's a vibe, but it's really high up, like because it's also a bit. My amps are on that gig in particular. Anyways, they were on a platform on the stage, so it's like, and then it's on top of the heads, and then I was wearing huge boots as well. That was scary. But yeah, it's a flying V. It's a flying V with a hip shot. So I use that for like Feel Good, Clint Eastwood, because that's in E flat. Like it's an E flat tuning, but I don't tune the whole thing. I just do the E
The
into E
songs that
flat.
need it. Okay.
And then I've got my Classic 4, and that's got a backup. So there's a green one with all these Gorillaz decals, which is like sort of, and it's actually got Murdoch heads in as my tuning knobs.
Nice.
In copper or brass, I can't remember which. And then I've got a white Classic 4 as my backup for that. I've got my Pink Thunder by Baum guitars, which I actually mainly use because Gorillaz did a song with Thundercat, and his tone on that song was so crazy, sort of spanky and stuff, and there was just nothing like it. And I played his signature, which is absolutely wild. Like he came and played with us on like 3 or 4 shows, and yeah, it's like 6-string, like super wide neck.
The neck is so huge,
but it's so thin, like on the back of it. So you can actually get around it like really easily. Like it's not like thick or anything like that. It's really thin. So he's like, you can see why he can sort of fly around it. But then the body's really deep. So it's like a jazz. I don't know, like a George Benson type, old jazz guitar, but with this mad neck. It's so crazy.
Did that interaction lead you at all into thinking about your signature instrument, or were you already playing hollow bodies?
I was already playing hollow bodies.
Cool.
My Classic 4 was a hollow body as well.
Right.
Yeah, that was preordained. But playing Thundercats and now playing mine, I personally would, having played them both, I'd still go for mine.
Right.
Because there's also, I think his is like these 2 like super crazy pickups on it that are just like so. He does a lot more effecty stuff anyway, so like it's super active, and I think it kind of needs to be. But like I said, I'm pretty simple, and I like things just like pretty straightforward.
Right.
I've got, what else do I have in that rack? I've got there's another Eastwood, which was it's called a map bass, which is like a white one with humbucker with humbuckers in it.
Yeah. It's like airplane something or airplane. I don't know. It's like those are so. That was the first time I heard of Eastwood.
Crazy shape. They're fun shapes. Like I think Jack White used to play Airline.
Right.
Like his red guitar's an Airline. And then I've got I think I've got a Yamaha BB something. I can't remember exactly the model.
Speaking my language.
Yeah, is that a bit of you?
I play a vintage BB 5000. Now I'll grab it because we're show and tell. Hang on.
Yeah, he'll grab it.
Yeah, what, this one?
Yeah, no, he's always got that thing on deck, dude. He's got like 15. Not really. I think he's got 2 and then half.
Oh yeah.
Supposedly, it's the first ever production 5-string bass, so it's like extremely tight. If you see.
Yeah, and I love that. That's one of my main issues with 5s in general, is that I need them to have 4-string energy.
Right.
Like I'm not, because I'm also just not. I don't come from the sort of gospel world of playing. I don't come from. In fact, I kind of don't really come from the bass world of playing in many ways. Like I'm kind of an instinctive guy. I've listened to a bunch of people, and I'm definitely a bass player in any kind of, by any measure, but I was never a technician. I didn't grow up listening to 5-string players. I didn't grow up listening to fusion. I didn't grow up, dare I say it, I didn't grow up listening to Jacko. So it's like I'm in fact, Jacko makes more sense to me because it's 4-string jazz. So it's like I like thin necks that I can do fun things with and just access easily. A lot of 5-strings I think are also just intimidating, because I think a lot of them, because they have a 5th string, it's almost like, what else should we add? I'm just like, why don't you just keep the 4-string, everything you're going good with the 4-string,
Right.
and add a 5th string?
Yeah.
You don't need to add an extra pot or like
Right.
all this other stuff.
Yeah. I grew up mostly as a 5-string player.
Mhm.
And along the way through recording and being exposed to other stuff, especially in this like alternative country scene that I'm in, everyone, it's P bass and flat wounds and like really passive basses, whatever. And I found the things I really enjoyed about those, but I also found that 5th string, well, I think I actually saw it in a review of your bass. I think sometimes there's a fundamental misunderstanding people have about 5-strings, which it's not just play more notes all the time. It is a way to get around the neck and express yourself differently. So you're able to hit lower notes farther up the neck.
Yeah.
That's not the same as like, what should this open B sound like? I need to play, a crazy rumbly B in a stadium all the time.
Yeah, no, actually, that now that you say that, that rings so true, because actually my playing above the 5th fret now is way more interesting.
Yeah.
Which you think you get the 5-string and it's all about the lower register. But you're right, you kind of have more access to more notes later up the fret. Which actually I found doing like I wrote a song recently which is like I'm not sure if you can hear that. Can you hear that?
Yeah, I can hear.
Yeah. What was it? It was like I can just do more chord stuff that I really like. That's
Yeah.
like it's way more fun doing that stuff. It feels, I don't know why it feels, the 5th string just makes you feel I don't know, I can just use more fingers to make make more chords.
I feel less limited.
Yeah. Which I thought I agree with you. I thought having, which also is a testament or a problem with some 5-string players, not all, some, is that unfortunately the persona or the reputation of 5-strings is that it's all about people who play like just too much, and it's it's just obnoxious players, which means that's all that instrument can do. But actually, like as is the case with any instrument, it's the player, it's not the thing itself.
It's taste, it's aesthetic, it's it's all the things that matter about art. It's less, but certain people see the 5-string and they immediately like have judgments against that. Someone one day told them you shouldn't do that, and then they're like, hey, just play this or play I will say I have been experimenting this last month. I have a Gibson Thunderbird, and I was like, okay, I'm playing with a heavy band where I actually do play the low stuff. And I have always felt more at home on a 5-string, so I'm like, okay, I'm going to string it BEAD, kind of like what you're saying. And I have loved it.
So you played just a 4-string Firebird, but just tuned low. Okay. Did you have to do anything to...
Yeah, I had to take it. The nut had to get refiled, and
okay,
that's why I did it to 1, and I kept it, and I used it on a few gigs because I'm like, if I do this to 2 basses, now it's 2 times I have to pay somebody to fix my mess. I am very into it. Very into it.
That's good to know, because I was considering doing that with that white one, that Baum guitar, and actually, I'm grateful that you've said that, because now I know that that's also an option.
Yeah.
Because also it just depends on sometimes you want the sound of the 4-string as well. The actual instrument itself sounds different to the 5.
I play things more lyrically on a 4-string. I don't know why. Maybe it's because I'm going up and down the neck a little bit more, but I find that my phrasing is better on a 4-string.
I don't know. I think it's because it's also it's kind of the universal tuning.
Right.
It's kind of what most music has been made, most sort of guitar music. And most pop music is probably most, except for like live bands tend to like the low.
Right.
But it makes sense because most songs will be in a tuning that will suit a standard guitar tuning.
Right.
I also find, my 4-string classic 5 is my baby. I've poured so many years into it and toured so much with it and played so much with it. Those flat wounds have been on it for years. That's going to be a whole different thing. That's what I've been using that for my solo stuff. But I've got a gig coming up with my band, and I might take my 5 and just see how that feels. Yeah, I haven't done a gig singing and playing with it properly yet. So we'll see what that's like.
So that's a good caveat. At what point did you transition? Well, I know you've started releasing stuff within the last year, really within the last, 8 months, 6 months. How did that happen? Have you always been writing songs? How did you move from bass mindset to songwriter mindset, or did you ever have to do that?
I've always written songs. I started out playing guitar when I was a kid and had a skate punk band when I was, 14. And yeah. Come on. We sound like, it was sort of a mixture of, sort of Sum 41 meets Jimmy Eat World, that kind of vibe. Jimmy's still probably one of my favorite bands.
Absolutely.
And then I got into like John Mayer, so more of the sort of solo songwriter type thing, but more like sort of contemporary, obviously with Nick, things from the past as well that influenced that. I love Paul Simon, for example, and but then I started playing professionally initially on bass and guitar. My brother's a bass player. He's also in a band called Metronomy, and he had a bass in the house, so I was always just messing around on it. And he's a very interesting player as well. He can play sort of normal stuff, but he was always doing chords and very, very melodic stuff. So that was also quite cool. But always writing songs. And then I actually got while doing the session-y, just sort of being in local bands, pub bands and stuff, I got a record deal when I was like 21, something like that. 21, nice. 22, with like major label thing. Unfortunately, it didn't really work out. I did some support tours. I opened for Lana Del Rey on her, like, I think her first UK tour. So it was like, this is going back like 2011 or something like that. And I opened for Emily Sandé. I opened for a few people. It was fun, but it was like nothing really happened, and I also didn't really know myself. I didn't really have a strong enough sense of identity. So actually, if that didn't really fizzle out, I wouldn't have really thrown myself wholeheartedly into the playing side of things and really establish a sustained career with that now. Because now that means I've got more resources and I've got a bit more of a steadier foundation, so I can now do my own stuff and not rely on that to absolutely blow up. Otherwise, I won't be able to eat. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
I can, like kind of put things out on my own terms. Hopefully, I'll build on those things and like it turns into its own thing that perpetuates. But actually, I don't think that I would want really to have my solo thing become the only thing that I do. One of the great things I love about what we do is the variety of things we get to play and the interesting bands, the interesting players. Like I was just in Kent in the south of England at this wicked residential studio called Joplin House, the Joplin House. Fun fact, it's where Thunderstruck was written, but whatever. I was playing with this singer called Evelyn May, who's like an alternative rock singer. She's going to be coming out in the new year, but she's also been playing on the scene for a while. She's from Australia, but I got to play with again this insane drummer called Martin Johnston from Scotland, who's like one of the maddest players I've ever played with. Super funny dude, super sweet guy. But I'm like, if I was, just in the back of a splitter van, going around the country doing my solo thing just because I need to do my art, I wouldn't have been able to meet him and see where that goes. Right. I'm really grateful for the connections. And actually, one thing I'll say about Damon Albarn, one of the things I've learned most from playing with Gorillaz, with Damon in his solo band, and this other projects that we've done together, is that he's a master collaborator. And that is the absolute pinnacle of anybody who's great. I think is great because they are constantly surrounding themselves with great people, and new people and interesting people, and being challenged by those around them in some ways. Like, I've never seen anybody with music taste as broad as Damon's, and it's always an interesting lesson in respect things you don't know, reach out to things you don't know. And also, that's not to say you have to like everything, because that's not. I don't think that's real either. I don't think anybody does. But I think it's always worth trying some new stuff and listening to some new stuff, and maybe auditioning for a band you wouldn't necessarily normally do. But why not? It could be, it's money, but it's also like, oh, this could be something fun, something interesting. Like that Japanese tour with singer Hikaru Utada, who's a great artist from Japan. Not only was I playing 5-string, which I'd never done a tour on a 5-string, I was also playing synth bass, and I've never done a tour on synth bass. So I was kind of like, this could kind of blow up in my face. But I thankfully had like a few months to kind of prepare. And I just absolutely caned it. I was just learning the songs, just playing the songs over and over and over and over. To the point where when we actually got to playing the gigs, it was like, okay, this felt all right. But I told myself I'd never be able to do a gig on keys or on a synth bass or on a 5-string. And this late in my career, who knew I could do something new? So I would encourage all the listeners, in whatever instrument or even whatever, just in life in general, it's like we tend to give ourselves these limited beliefs. We tend to believe limiting things about ourselves. But these are just thoughts. These aren't actually who you are. You can do something new. I bet you in 3 months you could do something you never thought you'd be able to do. And actually, I found that really refreshing and really encouraging. And
that sounds like a lot of personal work, where the major label experience did not allow you to find yourself. You had to do the work or become older or have the experience, whatever, to feel more secure about yourself. To, I don't know, kind of, you know what I'm saying? Like it's not like you just play an instrument or whatever. It is I am now a fully formed or a more fully formed artist after this experience, and now this is how I express myself. It's not, boy, I hope somebody will just give me a record deal so that I can all of a sudden be as cool as this guy, this guy.
Yeah, no, true. And also, unfortunately, the art isn't enough.
Right, absolutely.
The music is not enough, because it's also, especially like you guys will understand this, it's only it's maybe 50% of what we actually do. The rest is like all the admin stuff. The rest is traveling. The rest is getting new gigs. It's chasing invoices. It's like holding down a relationship while being a musician. It's being running a business. It's running a business. It's being a good friend while being a musician. It's being a good husband or brother or whatever. So it's like, actually, it's one thing just getting work. It's one thing just writing good tunes. It's another thing also cultivating a good life around that. Because you can have all the success in the world. I've seen people, I know gazillionaires who don't have it sorted. And it's like, you think you want that life, but actually it comes with everything that life comes with. It doesn't eliminate problems, It's
a different set of problems.
It's a different set of problems. And it's like, you have to not only chase money, you have to not only just chase making music and making art. You have to also try and make sure you have good people around you, that you sort of align who you are with what you do with who you are, because they're also separate things. There's also something quite funny that I heard recently, which I really like, about kind of you can't have all three of these. You can't have a gig that's great music, great money, and what's the other one? And a great hang. You tend to only get two at once. So maybe it's great money, great hang, but the music's a bit whack. Or great music, great hang, money's terrible. or
Amen.
yeah, do you know what I mean? Or you can get, or the hang is terrible, but the music's great and the money's great.
Yeah.
Which is actually the worst one. So if you're going to do
Right.
if you're actually going to do any of those, I think it's best to enjoy being around great people is actually the most important one.
Yeah.
Like, but if it's like, if the money is good, the music's good, but the people suck, it's also probably the hardest to walk away from, even when it's corrosive. So
Right.
it's like, beware of those ones, if you can. But if you can get all three, my goodness, that's like, it's the
That's
Goldilocks.
gold.
But in
Yeah.
general, yeah, I've very much, it's hard to get all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been lucky. I've definitely experienced all three at some points.
Yeah.
But it tends to be a mixture of just two.
Right. It's really tough because the hang is most of the day. The music is such a small part of the day.
Exactly.
I'm not saying it does. It's not
45 minutes,
proportionate.
Hour and a half.
Right. And then the hang is the other 23 hours of the day.
Yeah.
If you can't get that hang right,
rehearsals. It's like you spent all that time. Maybe you spend lots of time in the front end doing all the music stuff. Obviously, you're practicing at home, and then you're in rehearsals. But once you actually have it dialed in, and then you hit the road, you're traveling and you're hanging and you're living with each other. It's like having roommates.
Yeah.
For a couple months.
That's what I tell everybody. And honestly, when I'm in this world of like just complete hired guns, like everybody I know is just very. It's like, I hate to say this, but it's transactional a bit of just like, I'm a guy that plays bass. You need a bass player, and sometimes it's short notice. So sometimes you just end up on things, and I get really, really lucky because I've got good friends that recommend me for good things.
Great.
But I feel really bad seeing people that end up on these like hell gigs where you're like, oh. You get that middle of the night van call. All the guys are mad and old, and they don't want to be there anymore, and they're just kind of bummed that they're doing the middle of the night van call kind of thing. And you're just like, oh man, I really have lucked out here so far. So knocking on wood, but dude, the hang is everything to me.
It's so much of it. What would you say are the like pros and cons have you experienced of being like the sort of a hired gun where you're at in Nashville?
The pros are it pays great and it's extremely consistent. So even when, even when the artist is like completely upside down, like, dude, you go to play the show and they're getting probably a couple $100 to play it. My rate doesn't change. I don't care if there's 3 people or 3,000 people or 3 million people. I get paid and I get to feed my family and pay my bills. So that's good.
And that's a known, that's a known thing.
Right.
Like an artist hires you, they know that they are hiring someone legit and this is the rate and it's not dependent on your tips or whatever.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, 100%. The con is it's not maybe always your first choice in music, but I think what it's taught me a lot, and I'm probably a little bit different because I just genuinely try to say yes to as much as possible because I'm in love with the experience and I'm in love with like being surprised at like how much you enjoy it or maybe don't. Like, I've said yes to some like pretty suspicious, like, hey man, this is a pretty bad idea. I probably wouldn't say yes to this, especially for that money. And I'm like, you know what else would I be doing? Sitting at home watching that Somebody Feed Phil on Netflix. That's what I would have been doing. So I could do that in a van and I can go play at this ATV park for somebody. And then, dude, I took a fill-in gig on December 30th of the last year. It's 40 degrees when we started playing outside.
Oh, wow.
And I'm just like, dude, this is such a bad idea. And I have such like hilarious memories from it. So that's another big pro is when you're doing these like kind of, I'll fill in for a buddy here and I'll go take this here and here's my main gig. And then we need fill-ins on the main gig. I ended up just with this pool of just really great friends and collaborators. And now I've got this just Rolodex of dudes who will stone cold knock out anything you need. So then you get called for the fun, like, hey, my buddy's got like a local thing at a, dive in Nashville that is just playing like his 3-piece whatever. And then you kind of get involved in these, I don't know. It just leads to a lot of cool avenues. So those are the big pros to it. The con is it is transactional and you are playing music that I have zero input in the creation of and zero like I'd still draw inspiration from it because I just love playing live music and you still get to, make your own touch or whatever. But at the end of the day, it's someone else, drew it up with a couple other people and I'm just hired to, communicate that to an audience. So depending on how you look at it.
More competitive. There's a lot of bass players in town.
Yeah.
But there's plenty of guys in Nashville that come off the road with a bigger artist than you would expect just to play Broadway.
Right.
Right.
Because they'll have, 3 bands a night at the same time in some of these like multi-level bar things. And it's like, yeah, you're playing the same music, but you don't have to leave. And some of the nights you make insane money in comparison. So
yeah, I guess that's interesting. I suppose it also depends on what you want, because you have to really be at peace with the fact that with some gigs in particular, anyways, you are just a hired gun.
Yep.
You don't need to be going in there being like, oh, I've got some notes. It's like, no.
Yeah.
Like, play the tune that they sent you.
Yeah.
Like, because I know also I do know people who or I've at least heard of people who say turn up to a session and be like, this is my sound.
Right.
And they are not listening to the producer, or they're making it difficult, and
it's never worked for me.
Yeah, I mean, imagine. But I in some ways I envy the confidence.
Right.
But I'm also like, are you mad? Like, you can't do that.
Until you're like Thundercat, where you've got a thing. You would
you're
want
hired because of
Thundercat
it.
to do the thing.
Yeah.
Or even, I mean, like a Pino Palladino, someone else in his wheelhouse. Like, yeah, he can kill everything.
Yeah.
But you got him for the thing,
Yeah. Well, you also don't hire those guys to do
right.
Like, you hire them because of them. I guess, if you're that guy, if you're him, then that's why they're calling you. But you should know when they're hiring you for that.
Right.
Like,
only so many of us are him.
Yeah, it's true.
We're all working on it, but
we're all
I'm sure it's a blessing and a curse too, though. I feel like I've heard Pino, but maybe more Questlove, where everyone's like, do the voodoo thing, do the voodoo thing, do the voodoo thing.
Yeah.
And you're like, there's more to me than that, know. So I'm sure it's another set of problems.
Yeah, and that was so long ago as well. It's like, you kind of, I'm on to the other thing now.
Right. It doesn't matter that I'm still listening to voodoo twice a week.
Yeah.
I'm stuck on voodoo.
Yeah. It's funny because everyone's listened to that record way more than they have.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
I heard that Pino hasn't changed his strings since that.
I have heard that.
He's got those flat wounds on there. I think he's taken them off to like have it cleaned and serviced, etc. But he's kept the strings and he still uses them. I'm like, they actually probably do have actual voodoo in them.
Right. Absolutely.
Like, they should be like, when he moves off this mortar coil, those strings should be in like museum glass.
Absolutely.
Somewhere.
I think he was also down tuning for that, which also helped me mentally a lot. I've said this before, I'm not smart enough to down tune an instrument. Like, if I need to down tune my bass to E flat, mentally I'm still an E. So I'm
like E flat standard, or just the E.
Yeah, E flat standard. But like, I don't do alternate tuning, whatever. I can't do it. Guitar players, God love them, that they can do capos, and a capo would probably make it easier, but I'm not going to capo a bass.
It looks so whack. I've seen it, and it's just like, no.
Mark Hoppus does it.
Right. Well,
but
he's him. So let him do whatever he wants. But not for me. That's why I'm like 5-string. If you're in a guitar band for all your life, then standard tuning is probably great. But the moment you show up to a keyboard fronted gig, all bets are off. We're E flat, we're D flat, we're
flat.
They were flat.
Or an orchestral gig, because they're playing in B flat a lot, in F.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. No, that's actually true. It's so funny. Most songs are written on instruments that aren't conducive to like bass.
Right.
Like, it's
either guitar music or it's not.
Yeah, it's either guitar music or it's piano music.
Right.
And it's just like, you're at the mercy of whatever that pianist feels comfortable playing.
Yep.
It's like, then you have to fill in whatever. And I used to detune and just leave, but I'd only detune the E string. So either E flat or D. I'd always, and then I'd just work out a way of keeping the other strings the same.
Interesting.
I've never tuned the whole instrument. I've only tuned one string.
Nice.
See, that's extremely common. Everybody, when you show up to the gig, if you're doing like Broadway or a road gig, they literally will go, "We are in standard," or "We are down half." It's
Right.
immediately, and you might literally on the spot have to just drop everything a half step.
Okay.
And sometimes I feel like, especially when I was coming from the guitar world, where I'm just always have been a Strat guy. I have a floating bridge,
Right.
and it doesn't want to be drop tuned. Like you literally have to sit there and just coerce a Strat for an hour to get it to settle into E flat. So I'm like,
God.
it's just a new world for me, where literally on the spot you got to show up and be like, all right, where are we today? And I always make the joke. I always walk in, I go, all right, we a whole step up today, and they don't. We doing F sharp.
But I have been, and I won't name any names or who or when, but I was on a gig once where somebody had had just got a Nord stage keyboard, and for the first time we'd only used it for like one rehearsal, and we decided to use this. A song got added late to the set. It was in a quite difficult key for the singer, so it had to be transposed down. But instead of just like playing it down, the pianist used the transpose button, transposed it down a tone, right? And we get to the show. The show's amazing, but this is like the label are coming to the gig. This is like a big show, you know.
Right.
And the last song of the set in the like encore is this new song, and he presses. It's just the keyboard player at the top of the song. I'm getting anxiety just thinking about it. The keyboard is just the keyboard at the top of the song, and they press transpose up a tone by mistake.
No.
So the song starts, and I'm immediately like, the singer's almost screaming. I'm like, what is going on here? And I was playing guitar in the band, so I'm just like trying to work out quietly where we are.
Yeah.
The bass player's the next entry, and they're coming up like in 3, 4, and she's like,
right.
And then by the time it got to the chorus, which was my entry, I was with it, but it was terrifying. Just one of those moments that, you just kind of It comes back to me like I think about it like every 8 months or something, where I just remember that feeling. Yeah. We've all got
the worst.
Some terrible moments like that.
There's a lot of the studio bands too that'll record in standard, and when they go out on tour, they'll all just agree.
Yeah.
Tune your instrument down a half step, play it like we did in the studio.
Right.
But a lot of those bands have techs, and or if you're in an environment using tracks and a singer struggling, then usually a keyboard player or something's in charge of tracks. I mean, more traditionally at least, and they'll just be like, "Oh, let's just boop 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 boop, take it down," and then now all of a sudden you're like, "Uh-oh, we are unpaved territory here."
Yeah, taking it down in particular is just like. Obviously, it rarely is a case of can we take this up, but it's like, I'd always freak out. I would
never
freak
had
out,
that happen.
actually.
Well, not to do the Broadway thing again, but people will do. You'll see that when like a girl will sing a guy song, she'll be like, "Oh, let's just take it up a fourth," and so you're like, "All right, well, this is an interesting key." Right. Which is like, again, I love that kind of stuff because you're like, oh, this is a new thing. We're doing like, something that's traditionally like drop D up in A or G, and you're like, this is kind of weird. Makes you think kind of twice about it. Or like, one I kept running into was, so not only do people drop. You familiar with the Nathan East classic bass line from Footloose, right?
Oh yeah,
it's a crazy bass line. It is dependent on an open A. Like dependent.
Right.
Everybody wants to do it down sometimes in G. And you're already in E flat. So all of a sudden you're in this wonky Footloose key.
Oh, mate.
I know. And you're sitting there and you got to tell yourself, you got to go, all right, A, I'm a professional musician so I can knock this out. B, that no one's going to call me on it other than me. You have to tell yourself, as long as I get in the vein of, we're going to get through it. But then I go to C and I'm like, I'm doing such a disservice to this legendary bass line. I'm just... wiping the floor with it. So,
but usually people are too drunk to notice in that state anyway. They're just there to hear the chorus.
By the time you hit Footloose, mate, it's time to go. It's time for them to go home.
Right.
It's like this is near the end of the set.
Man, I don't know if you've seen it, but Nashville, a lot of the bands too will bring tip girls, or they'll have tip girls on Broadway, and they will come up to you if you are sitting in the venue where music is being played. They will come to your table and do this.
Wow.
And like hold their hand out until you pay them.
They'll have like the band's name on the t-shirt or something.
They probably do this 7 times a day. It depends on who's in there. And they're going to take their cut of your tips, but they like you cannot be in this room listening to the music of the band without like they will make you feel horrible.
Wow.
And every seat is someone who could be tipping. So if you're drinking water and you're not tipping, you know,
it's not, that is so not a UK thing. Like pub bands, if you're playing in a pub, you get your fee.
Right.
And you go home. There's
Right.
no tipping. I mean, maybe some people might do it as a gesture, but it's not expected.
With great risk comes great reward. But
yeah, I mean, but I think, you know, America has a more of a tipping culture, and actually, it has more, especially in the part of the world where you guys are. It's more of a live music culture as well in general.
Right. For sure.
I really noticed it when I did when I went to my first South by Southwest, and it's just like I've never experienced just a whole town playing music, not just listening to music or going to gigs. It was like it felt like every other person could just play.
Yep.
And I just like a buddy of mine was playing in a house band in a bar, and like he would come and say hello to me, and he just hand his guitar to some other dude, and they'd come up and just cover him for a minute.
Yeah.
I was just like, what is actually happening here? And then you go to the next bar and it's raging. Go to the next bar, it's raging. Go to some dive across town, it's raging players. I'm like, bloody hell! It's like, it's really amazing. I've got a friend called his name's. Do you know a singer called Eddie 9-Volt?
I don't think so.
He's cool. He's yeah, I think he's from not that far from Nashville actually, and a really great blues guy. Really cool. Check him out. It's really good music. Soul blues guy. And yeah, like him and his band, they came through London recently, and I got to see them. They were really, really, really amazing. But he's just grown up. It's just in the culture. It's just like he grew up playing music, and then you end up on a stage somewhere in your local town, and you kind of have to be half decent, otherwise you just don't make it.
Yeah, we have in Lexington right now, we have an uncharacteristically good music scene. We kind of had a weird, when I was growing up, it was very like metal and like emo oriented, but like all the serious people that were a lot older, it was like I felt like it was pretty hostile, not very nice, not very like inclusive, and people weren't really building each other up outside of like church scenes. You know, you kind of had a church musician scene, and then like guys that thought they were the real musician scene, and then you had like all the emo kids and the whatever. But this alternate country resurgence thing happened with like a Tyler Childers and Sturgill Simpson and like these really big artists now, and the scene kind of transformed into this really welcoming, interesting, like I don't know, I've never seen anything like it. It's certainly a cool thing right now. Lexington's not that huge, but it's right in the middle of Cincinnati, Nashville, Louisville, and Indianapolis.
Okay.
So I can drive 2 to 3 hours to any of those in either way. So now I have some artistic access to all the good stuff.
A bunch of different places. But that alt country thing is kind of now becoming the pop sound in general, because like listen to like Sabrina Carpenter or like even like Chapel Roan has moments of that sort of thing, and it's like, oh, you kind of need to do a bit of that anyways. I think there's just do you know what, I think there's something about Beyonce doing something a bit country, not even strictly a country thing, but I think there's just been another light being shone on country music and just country writers and the sort of artistry and the craft of that sort of black belt level songwriting, which I think is actually really good for music at large, because it's such a school of
absolutely
of songwriting, of playing, of lyric writing, of, you know, it's even producing. It's like I mean, some of the sessions you must be doing, Nick, I mean, these guys are churning out like just song after song after song after song after song. It's like, and it has to be at a certain level. It's like,
there's kind of a formula, and it's a difference. Like, it's the do we do what the formula says, and it's like, and this is not to hate on the country industry thing in this sentence, at least, but like the formula is good. the formula sounds good. Like, how
Works.
can you plugging into an API console and all this like tried and true studio stuff, how could this not be dope? You know, I'm still trying to figure out if the country resurgence thing has already happened or if it's about to happen. Because
do you know what I think? I'll tell you my theory. I think what's about to happen is you're about to see a bunch of artists from outside of the US taking it on.
That'd be awesome.
I think that's becoming like a lot more singers around here. I think are becoming a bit more sort of country conscious, and I think in the way that sort of like Adele and Amy Winehouse, who are like British girls, are huge soul singers.
Right.
Like, what's that about?
Right.
I think you're also going to get, because country also, it's funny because country is like, I don't know, there's something, you kind of still have to be a bit real in some ways.
Absolutely.
And
authenticity
I think
is important.
Authenticity in some ways, even though it's heightened, it's like each song is almost like a telenovela. It's like a melodrama, but it's often related to something in the person's life, or often related to something at least they have some sort of knowledge about. And I think sort of UK R&B, UK hip hop, UK even like now UK jazz has something like to do with that realness, and I think there's a really cool relation that the two things can connect. I'd love to see that.
Me too.
Who knows? Maybe that's.
I'm kind of on the outside of it, and I like that. I like the position I'm at right now. Just kind of, I don't know. It's all cool, and I like that the radio country thing from the '90s is coming back really hard. Which is the stuff I grew up hating and thinking was profoundly uncool because my dad was in country radio. And so we'd move based on what radio station he was in. And like, I never appreciated the Alan Jackson and the like all these like 90s country guys. I hated it because it was like bring your son to work day. Every concert I went to. And now it's coming back and I'm listening to this music that is extremely commercial. And I'm like, this is really good. Like, arguably, even if I don't like it like all the time, I'm like, this is a fantastically written song. The mixing is fantastic. The studio guys are fantastic. This is arguably fantastic.
That's maturity. I think being able to look back at things you cringed at as a kid and being like, oh, actually I can appreciate this now, because maybe you were just doing it, you were biased, and of course you couldn't see past that when you're a kid, because you're like, what, you're gonna like the same music that your dad likes? Like no, come on. But now it's like, I grew up in the church, and I've since stepped away in terms of faith, and I used to really kind of, as a teenager, rail against the music. I was like, but it was the best musical education I could possibly have.
Holy moly,
some of the best songwriting you've ever heard in your life, and I can have a really, really deep connection to it and deep appreciation for it. Nowadays, and I think again that's sort of something I'd encourage any listeners who's any musician of whatever genre. It doesn't matter if you're in like a Swedish black death metal band, you can deal with listening to some opera music or some I don't know. If you're in a UK, if you're a UK drill artist, maybe you should listen to some country. Or if you're I don't know, if you're a flamenco guitarist, listen to some gypsy jazz from France. It's like there's, in this sort of fraternity of music and just the gifts that music, the breadth of music that we have access to now, because now, off your phone you can listen to music from sort of anywhere, when. I would encourage anyone to just listen to stuff that they haven't listened to ever, or listen to stuff that they were kind of not listening to when they were a kid for some arbitrary sort of nebulous
I'm too cool
reason.
for this.
Exactly.
You
weren't, and you're not.
Right.
Yeah.
You're not too cool for anything. So get over yourself and listen to some good tunes.
I love that.
Yeah. The beautiful thing about the church music thing, I think, especially for a bass player, really for anybody, but especially bass player, no matter what the song is doing, it is at least lyrically taken down to its simplest forms to have this cadence that can be easily understood by people to follow along. And it's sometimes it's like fairly complex ideas in like hymnals or whatever, but sung in a way that you're like, wow, as a bass player, you can take a lot from that, where you're like, what is the simplest I can get away with to communicate?
Right.
Yeah, and also so the thing I think all sacred music, so not just like gospel, but like,
Right.
yeah, like you say, hymnal, even older style, but any sort of sacred music. I think the thing it does for you is it teaches you to emotionally connect to music first.
Right.
So it's like, regardless of whether you care for the message or whatever, what you're being taught in general is like, it really matters getting into the emotion, getting into the feeling first, and try and communicate that, and
Yep.
then you can get into the theology or whatever.
Right.
And I think, yeah, as a bass player, I mean, we are the feeling machine of the band,
right.
and it's like, you need to connect to the feel of this music, like,
Yep.
as best as possible, because
Yeah.
it's also probably speaks to like some really old part of the brain. Like, this is like the most like primal frequency that you could just like, this goes into people, as opposed to, it's not just like sort of a cerebral thing. This is a feeling. And yeah, as bass players, we need to connect quickly and efficiently to the song and to the people listening.
Yeah.
I love
Amen. I think that's a great spot to land the plane. It has been amazing to have you.
Yeah, man.
we
Thanks,
are
guys. I really appreciate
extremely
it.
grateful. We'll have to chat again sometime, but
Yeah, 100%.
This is good. All right. You can find Shea on the socials. He has a great Instagram. He's a good Instagram follow. So go hit him up over there. And he has a YouTube channel, especially with his original music on it and his music videos that are coming out.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, and there's going to be new stuff coming pretty soon. So yeah, keep an eye
Let's
out.
go.
So, all right. Well, thanks again. We will see you guys soon. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.